Jason Rzucidlo reporting inside the big house here in Ann Arbor, and we're here for a special meeting of the Detroit Economic Club. Stay tuned for remarks from U of M Athletic Director David Brandon.
$105 million. So we're managing revenues, we're managing costs, we're managing a P&L, we're building projects, we've got a capital budget, we're out there investing capital and setting priorities based on what the returns of that capital will be. And we're servicing the needs of 750 student athletes who participate in 27 sports. And all of the coaches and all the doctors and all the trainers and all the staff and equipment managers and all the infrastructure in terms of facilities, billions of dollars worth of facilities, all of that is encompassed in this organization that I lead. So it's not a big business in terms of, Domino's $6 billion of global retail sales in 67 countries. But in our world here, this is a substantial management challenge, a lot of issues, a lot of moving parts. I've been in this job for 6 months, and I can tell you I'm working harder now than any year I can remember, any 6-month period I can remember in my 22 years as a CEO. I've never worked as hard and as long as I'm working, but a large part of that is because I love what I'm doing, I know it's important, and I'm working hard to get it right.
You mentioned leadership, and we both played for a guy named Bo Schembechler, and we, to this day, carry lessons we learned from him and Coach Mo with us in the things that we do today. Talk to me about his influence on you and where you went. I know he helped get you your first job at P&G, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I came here to be a teacher and coach. That's all I ever wanted to do. And I was doing my student teaching, and I all lined up to have a coaching job, and I wanted to be like Bo. I wanted to coach. And this recruiter from P&G called and said that they'd been over on campus, and they had asked the coaches. They'd given a list of things that they were looking for. Good student academically, competitive, good communication skills, leadership skills. A lot of stuff that makes you feel pretty flattered. The last thing on the list, though, is, oh, by the way, Bo, we want to be sure and recruit somebody who will never have a chance in the NFL. And Bo said, you should go talk to that Brandon. So I'm doing my student teaching, and I'm enjoying life and getting ready to be a coach, and the phone rings, and it's the recruiter from P&G. I've never had a business class in my life. And he called and said, we really want you to come to lunch and talk to us about a career at P&G. And I said, you have the wrong Dave Brandon. Honest to God, this is how naive I was. He said, well, I agreed to pay free lunch. I agreed. And he said, would you bring a resume along? And as God is my witness, I said, well, what's a resume? I just was totally unprepared for this. He said, don't worry about it, just show up. So I showed up. And they said I got a company car. It definitely paid better than teachers were making back in the 70s. And I thought, well, I can always go back to teaching and coaching, so I'll try this business gig. It worked out okay. Figured it out.
Still up in the air. I figured it out. This isn't your first rodeo in regards to administration, in regards to universities.
No. John Engler called me many years ago and asked me to accept an appointment on the board of trustees at Central Michigan University, and I was up there for 5 years. I chaired the board the last 2 years I was there. We built a number of the athletic facilities that they enjoy up there during the time that I was on the board, because I had that passion, and I led some of those projects, their indoor practice facility. And I learned a lot about higher ed, and I was traveling 3.5 hours up there. When you're chair of the board, I was going up there every month, maybe even every 3 weeks. Trudging through the snow to get up to Mount Pleasant. I'm thinking, this isn't even my school. Maybe I should see what it's about to see if I could be a trustee at the university. I quickly learned that it's a statewide election. Andrew is up for election this cycle, and you're campaigning. You have to get on the ballot through the convention politics process, and then you have to be out there on the ballot and hopefully win. And I put 30,000 miles on my car that year. I went out and I campaigned. Bo did a radio commercial for me that was really terrific, and I got out there and I was successful. And so I served for 8 years as a regent at the university, and that's full immersion. Andrew and his colleagues worked incredibly hard. They put in an enormous amount of time, no pay, to help keep this place moving in the right direction. And so I I fundamentally have 13 years of higher education experience from a governance perspective, and that's made this transition infinitely easier for me.
You rise to the top in business. You're a CEO. What was the biggest surprise that you got when you were the guy in charge, when you were at the head of the table?
In business?
Yeah.
I don't know. You kind of evolve into that role. The biggest surprise is, you're in that CEO job and, you mumble, gee, I'm kind of in the mood for a chocolate chip cookie, and pretty soon 18 people are bringing me a chocolate chip cookie. I mean, you have to be careful what you say, and you have to be careful what you wish for, because what you say and what you do is, the ripple effect of that is substantial. And the bigger the organization, Domino's had 175,000 team members in 67 countries, and so you have to understand that when you take a policy position, when you say something, it reverberates, and particularly in the world in which we live today, about 3 minutes after you say it, it's reverberating.
The reason I asked the question, because the next one is, you're an athletic director now, 6 months. What's been the biggest surprise that you've come into this with going, holy cow, this stuff happens? Go ahead.
I think the biggest surprise for me is just the number of moving parts. It's like everything else. From afar, well, 250 employees, it's all in one community, they all speak the same language. I could put them all in this room and talk to them. You can't do that when you're running a global enterprise. So to a large degree, it feels like the level of difficulty is going to be substantially less. The reality is that every day is like coming to work and going whitewater rafting. And you just wonder if it's going to be a level 3 or a level 4 or a level 5 day, because you've got 750 young student athletes doing what they do. You've got ambitious, aggressive coaches who are out there trying to do what they do. You've got a business to run in terms of managing revenues. And I walked into a situation where NCAA investigation, expansion of the Big Ten, realignment of the Big Ten, there's a lot going on exterior to Ann Arbor that's taken a lot of time and requiring a lot of attention. It's total immersion. It is a 24/7 job. And that's been a surprise.
The specifics, you walk in and there's an investigation. I thought one of the great things that happened that showed your leadership, when they said at your press conference, who's to blame for this? And you said, I am. You weren't here then. Why?
Well, listen, I represent this department, I represent this community. If you're a leader, you step forward and take responsibility. And yeah, I wasn't here when some of these things happened, but the reality is I'm here now, and they happened. And in some cases we were sloppy, and in some cases we didn't do things as well as we should have done them. And in some ways we didn't communicate effectively. Our chain of command broke down, and there were things that we just didn't do well. And I felt it was important to stand up and recognize that, admit to it, and be contrite and apologetic about it, but then fix it.
Have you fixed it, and do you think that the NCAA, and that's a real wild card, has accepted those fixes?
Yeah, I fixed it. The issues that we had that got us to the point where we committed these violations, I can assure you those situations have been addressed. As it relates to what the NCAA is going to do, it's up to them. We were in Seattle a couple weekends ago. It was a long meeting. I can't say a lot about what happened there other than I felt good. Going back to what Bo taught us, we were prepared. We had done a mock hearing where we literally sat in the seats in the same configuration the room was going to be in. We were at the introductions, the briefing, the protocol. We were rehearsed to the point where when we got to Seattle and we entered the room, we felt like we'd been there. And where'd you learn that from? So we prepared. We had a plan in terms of what we wanted to communicate, how we wanted to communicate it, and I think we executed very well. It'll be up to the NCAA to decide whether they agree, but I think we executed very well.
You're taking the Big Ten, or involved in the Big Ten conference expansion, and now there's talk that Michigan Ohio State won't be the last game of the year. They may be in different divisions. Dave, you're taking my Big Ten. You're taking the traditional Big Ten. You just scrap it. Well, that's not acceptable to me. But there's